The standard history of 20th century philosophy presents a neat timeline for our understanding of human existence. Within this narrative, Simone de Beauvoir is often cast in a secondary role, relegated to a translator who brought Jean-Paul Sartre's existentialist theories into the political sphere. To identify the flaw in this history, we must look at the baseline she was reacting against. From Aristotle to Kant, the philosophical anthropology of sexual difference defined women through a deficit of rationality or a biological destiny. Traditionalists, such as Julius Evola, viewed these differences as a metaphysical binary, defining male and female not as mere categories, but as eternal, opposing spiritual principles. Early existentialism shattered this binary by insisting that existence precedes essence, that humans possess no predetermined nature. However, this shift created a conceptual void. It treated consciousness as a blank slate, failing to account for how physical, differentiated bodies navigate a material world that is already structured by power. The publication of The Second Sex in 1949 marks a radical rupture from both classical essentialism and this disembodied version of existentialism. Beauvoir's work is an original philosophical anthropology, grounded in the lived reality of the sexed body. Consider the context of France immediately after the Second World War. French women gained the right to vote in 1944. But while these political freedoms were expanding, the philosophical tools used to analyze human life were stagnant. Mid-century phenomenology remained blind to the systemic, historical imprisonment of half the human species. This created a paradox for the existentialists. If human beings have no predetermined nature, why is gender oppression systemic across diverse cultures and eras? To resolve this, Beauvoir deployed the epoché. This is the phenomenological method of suspending judgment and stripping away assumptions to examine how we experience phenomena directly. Beauvoir did not apply the epoché to a generalized consciousness, but specifically to the experience of sexual difference. By bracketing the natural attitude, the assumption that societal roles are biological truths, she exposed gender not as a destiny, but as a constructed, ongoing process. To see where Beauvoir's path diverged, we must examine the foundational framework of Jean-Paul Sartre. Sartre's ontology relies on a dualism that divides reality into two states. The first is being in itself, the passive matter of the physical world. The second is being for itself, human consciousness, which he viewed as a transparent, free subject. In this model, biological realities like maleness and femaleness hold no existential weight. They are relegated to ontic accidents. For Sartre, being a woman has no more fundamental significance than being left-handed. Beauvoir argued this was a misunderstanding of freedom. A subject is not free if society structurally blocks their capacity to transcend their circumstances. While Sartre analyzed the look of the other as a clash between two equal subjects, he failed to account for a look that carries the weight of systemic objectification. His transparent for itself is too abstract to describe a subject whose very existence is marginalized by history. Maurice Merleau-Ponty attempted to resolve this dualism by focusing on embodiment. He proposed the corp prop, or the lived body, which intertwines our consciousness with our surroundings. This led to the concept of the I can body. This describes our subjectivity through our capacity to act, an unburdened, frictionless ability to interact with the world. Beauvoir identified a male-centric blind spot here. The I can body assumes a neutral, egalitarian subject. This assumed neutrality is, in reality, a male privilege disguised as a universal constant. The female body experiences the world through the asymmetrical weight of being perceived by others, a gaze that restricts movement and limits potential. Merleau-Ponty's holism fails by ignoring the cultural burden placed on female bodies. This realization informs Beauvoir's defining axiom: one is not born, but rather becomes a woman. She explains this through sedimentation, how history and culture accrete on the body over time. Gender is an accreted historical project, not biological destiny. This creates alienated perception, internalizing the world's oppressive gaze. Society's natural attitude constructs the male body as the absolute norm. Simultaneously, it casts the female body as the inessential other, defined by mystery and lack. Consequently, women's bodies become colonized spaces, governed by external expectations. Beauvoir defines this condition as immanence, the state of being trapped in the repetitive maintenance of domestic life. This structural immanence denies women the transcendence, the ability to project oneself into the future, that is granted to men. By proving that the lived body is asymmetrically loaded by cultural sedimentation, Beauvoir rewrote the rules of intentionality. After the second sex, this anthropology of the sexed body allowed for the dismantling of old philosophical certainties. Beauvoir's legacy lies in her recognition that the body is both a site of potential freedom and a site of historical colonization. This insight birthed the materialist feminism of the late 20th century. Thinkers like Christine Delphi and Monique Wittig grounded their work in Beauvoir's analysis of the body as situation. They transformed the concept of colonization into a political category, defining womanhood as an oppressed class trapped in domestic exploitation, rather than a biological group. A second lineage emerged through post-structuralist and psychoanalytic feminism. Philosophers like Judith Butler and Julia Kristeva took up the mechanism of becoming. They theorized that if gender is a project accreted over time, then identity is not a fixed destination, but a continuous, performative act. These divergent traditions, one focusing on political class, the other on performative identity, are anchored in Beauvoir's initial phenomenological rupture. Beauvoir forced the phenomenological tradition to confront the material reality of flesh. She was an original ontologist who identified the blind spots of her peers and corrected them. Her groundbreaking anthropology of the sexed subject remains the most foundational lens for understanding human embodiment in the world today.